Jack.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to listen to this. Some of you probably heard the first program I did for Charlie. We're going to do a series of 4 altogether. This is number 2. Number 1 was how to thrive and gain resiliency during difficult and challenging times. This one is the 3 key habits of resilient financial professionals. And Charlie Van Duren and the whole team, Durbin and the whole team at Social Advisors has been fantastic. I hope he has a chance to tell you a little bit about what they do later, because I'm extremely impressed and have been. And that's why I allow Charlie to be one of the few people I give this whole series to. He's probably the first group that I've given this whole series to. And usually people pay a lot of money for this, but for Charlie, the world's his oyster. He's got me by the tail, and that's the way it's to be. So burnout.
Thank you.
Burnout has been described as a disease of disengagement. It's a chronic process that includes unplugging and disconnecting from your work, your friends, your family, your health. And the most important part of the definition here is chronic, because this arises slowly and insidiously. To a large extent, burnout is the result of a mismatch between the demands of your job and your available resources for dealing with and adapting to those demands. And now with COVID and this awful pandemic, your job has been filled with unprecedented and unexpected demands on top of what goes with the territory already. So a lot of people are vulnerable to burnout, may not even recognize it. And I hope you'll realize some of these things and find some ways to avoid it when you listen to what I have to say today. By the way, because I have a lot of material to give you in a short period of time, most of you won't have time to take notes. So there are 2 things you can do. You can contact me with any questions you don't get a chance to ask today, or any question you may not be comfortable asking in the public forum. Just email me at drjack@advisingtheadvisors.com. Number 2, all of this material I'm going to give you today and much, much more is in my book, The Financial Advisor's Ultimate Stress Mastery Guide. That's a $37 book I'll make available for you online for $15. Just email me, drjack@advisingtheadvisors.com. I'll tell you how to do that. And number 3, because Charlie is such a good guy and he works with such great advisors, I am going to give anyone on this call a free coaching session if you're interested. So all you have to do again is email me, drjack@advisingtheadvisors.com, and hopefully I'll have the time. Right now I see there are how many people? There are 18 people minus us, so 16 people. I can probably squeeze that into the next few weeks. So anyone who wants a free coaching session, it'd be my pleasure. So keep in mind that burnout is not a personal failing. It tends to hit the best employees, those with enthusiasm, those who accept responsibility readily, and whose job is an important part of their identity. In fact, burnout is more probable with folks obsessed with their jobs. And in my career, as a psychologist and now as a coach, I've worked with hundreds of people who were just workaholics and obsessed with their jobs. And that's part of the reason they had burnout. They didn't have variety in their lives. If you listened to Charlie in the beginning here, if you were on a few minutes ago, you heard him say he can't wait to get his family in the big camper that they have, or whatever you call it, recreational vehicle, and travel across the country and down to Florida where he has another home. This is putting some variety in your life and taking the stress away. A lot of people don't do that. They're afraid that if they don't obsess about their job for a few minutes, if they stop doing it, then they'll lose everything. Recent research by the American Psychological Association shows that 70% of all American workers, that's in any field, not just advisors, any field, feel disengaged, which is a major symptom of burnout. And their stress levels are amazingly high. And we know from a 2018 advisor wellness study of financial advisors by FlexShares that advisors reported an average stress level that was 23% higher than the national norms of all people. So financial professionals like yourself are very vulnerable to burnout. Think of your emotional and physical energy reserves like a bank account. If you don't add reserves to it by relaxing, refreshing yourself, having variety built into your life, getting away from the drudgery, your account will become drained and burnout is the result. Some of the core symptoms of burnout include fatigue, No matter how much you rest or sleep, you still feel fatigued and exhausted. Cynicism about life or your job or both, feeling that nothing you do really matters. And burned out people are not excited anymore about their work. They're just going through it like a robot. Even major successes in things they once loved generally don't matter much. They're just disengaged. A sense of inefficacy. What that means is burnout people tend to feel like they're exerting significant effort, but they're not making any progress or gaining any recognition. And lack of attention to the job, inability to control your attention to the job and its requirements is a key symptom of burnout. I've had advisor clients I've worked with who avoid going into the office, or they avoid certain clients that they have difficulty with. And by the way, in my book, The Financial Advisor's Ultimate Stress Mastery Guide, there is a chapter there on the 10 most toxic kind of clients and exactly how to deal with that. Physical cues or clues that can include frequent headaches or digestive issues, a lot of gut problems, difficulty sleeping, chest pain. Psychological indicators can be anger, irritability, impatience, hopelessness, helplessness, and a general lack of enjoyment. So your personality and your professional life puts you at high risk. Why do I say your personality? Because most financial advisors, just like me, I'm not a financial advisor, but I have the same personality type, are type A personalities. You know, I was doing a group for Asian advisors once, and I said type A personalities, and they said, "Do I mean type A, the city and the country of, of Korea, of South Korea?" Type A. They thought I was talking about TIPAI. No, type A personalities. Financial advisors are really at high risk because they have type A personalities, and a lot of that involves perfectionism and afraid to do something halfway because you feel like you'll fail and so forth. Again, there's a whole chapter on the two personality types that are most prone to stress in my book. For example, an advisor I worked with recently told me he gets up at 3 a.m. To begin his 6.5 hours before the market opens. He's on the West Coast. He gets up at 3 a.m. Since he's responsible for portfolio investments, he believes he has to spend hours in research in order to provide the best possible advice for his valued clients and those of the other associates in his firm. And he's afraid not to work those long hours. Can you imagine how draining this is on him? How intense this is for him? So, you know, a lot of us have the trait of perfectionism, and it's a major cause of burnout. Do your beliefs include the idea that you must be perfect or you fail? Um, I like to talk to people about progress instead of perfection. And I talk to athletes about that. There's no such thing as becoming a perfect athlete or perfect financial advisor. But if you're progressing, then you're making huge changes, which can be important. The struggle for perfection and innate hostility sometimes go together. A lot of us who struggle for perfection have this hostility inside us. We get frustrated, we get upset if we don't get what we want, if we can't control everything. And that is a serious problem, by the way. If you have or you know people who have that hostility component of type A personality, that leads to many emotional and physical disorders. Those will be talked about in a subsequent program I'm going to do for all of you called How to Live Much Longer Than Your Kids Hoped You Would. A funny title, but a serious subject. How do you live longer and better? What are the psychological secrets for that? So perfect is the enemy of good. Most people feel good just isn't good enough. I have to be perfect. Now, sometimes we have iceberg core beliefs that get in the way. And iceberg core beliefs, I call them that because like an iceberg, only a small part of it is above the surface. Most of it is unconscious, and they contribute to our mindset. So one of those iceberg core beliefs is that I can't admit I have a problem and I can't seek help because that looks like weakness. Another iceberg core belief might be I have to be perfect or I feel like I'm a failure. Another one would be this is the way I've always been, I can't change. Another one is, well, my dad or my mom are like this, it's in my DNA, there's nothing I can do about it. If you recall, if you attended my last workshop on stress, you'll know that you can do all of these things. None of these things that I just mentioned are true. And stress is really ultimately under your control. So getting into that, burnout resilient habit number one is to recognize your toxic thinking patterns. There's a lot you can do to protect yourself from burnout. You don't necessarily have to make monumental changes such as leaving your job or changing your career or getting divorced or anything else if that's part of your stress. As I discussed in the first webinar, if you build awareness of where your stress comes from, it's from your internal dialogue about situations. You know, a toxic client is on the phone. Your secretary says, there's a client X needs you to call back as soon as you can. She's really upset. Okay, what do you say to yourself about that conversation? That's what triggers whether you're going to be stressed or not. You can control those conversations. That's the key. So if you can't solve a problem that you can't acknowledge, you have to learn to recognize the signs that you're being pushed to the edge by this internal dialogue habits that we all tend to develop. And again, if you didn't attend the last workshop, perhaps Charlie still has a link for it. I may have it because he sent it to me, and if it's still active, I'll send it to you. Remember, events and situations you face do not cause stress, anxiety, frustration, fear, or any other emotion. It's the conversations you have about the situation that determine your emotions and behaviors. So be aware of the toxic conversations you have in your head, like conversations that start with, what if? The two worst words ever put together in the English language, because after what if is almost always a scary negative thought. Or I don't know how to do this, or I can't do this, or I shouldn't have done that, or I hope this works out well. Those of you who have been in golf or tennis, think about a time when you said to yourself in golf, I hope I don't hit it into the water. Or in tennis, I hope I don't double fault. Think about that. Most of the time, what happens after that is exactly what you hoped wouldn't happen. And you may say, what? I just told myself, I hope I don't do this. Well, the answer to that is you alerted the emergency system in your brain, the fight or flight nervous system, that thinks there's an emergency going on, almost as if a lion is chasing you, because you gave yourself a scary thought, hitting it into the water or double faulting. And so part of the fight or flight nervous system is to tighten up your arm and leg muscles. Well, your arm and leg muscles are not tightening up unconsciously. You're not holding the club the same way or the racket the same way. No wonder you're hitting it into the water or double faulting. So again, a lot of that was in our last seminar, and I'll get you, or Charlie will get you the link to that. Keep this equation in your mind, or write this down. I'll give it to you slow enough so you can write it down, because this applies to your work and everything else in your life. Your performance at any time equals your talent, plus your experience, plus your training, plus your product knowledge, minus distractions. And the number one distraction is a toxic conversation you have with yourself about whatever the situation is. So if you're distracting yourself with a lot of toxic conversations, your performance will never reflect your talent and your experience, etc. But if you can keep those distractions down, which is the number one thing that psychologists like me teach people how to recognize and do, if you can keep those distractions down, your performance will always be reflective of your talent, your experience, and your training. Listen, I work with 3 Olympic gold medal winners. The difference between an Olympic gold medal winner and someone who wins bronze is not the talent, the experience, the training, the knowledge of their sport. It's none of those things. They're all equal. Why does somebody win the gold and someone either comes in 3rd place, 4th, 5th, or 6th, still great athletes? Why does that happen? The total difference is the distractions that they did not control. It's all in the mindsets. So advisors who are well aware of their internal dialogue and recognize toxic habits avoid burnout. Let's open it up to a few questions now, Charlie.
Hey, Jack, just muted myself. We got one great question that I can weigh in on a little bit too, from our friend Stephanie. Stephanie asked, hello, it's not about empty obsessing, rather it's about actually executing. Now the question is, I suppose the final solution is dropping clients, so bandwidth is more in line, with the time and capabilities we have.
That's really interesting, because in my book, I talk about giving yourself the best birthday present you can give yourself every year, and that's get rid of your most toxic client. Doesn't matter how much money that person's bringing in. Once you do that, the relief you will feel will probably lead you to getting more clients to replace this one, because that huge anchor of stress will be gone. And I teach you how to do that in the book.
Yeah, Jack, I totally agree. I do a lot of coaching, a lot of business development coaching. Some of those relationships, 4, 5, 6 years. Something that always comes up in that coaching is right sizing. Uh,
Right,
Now, I might work with, I've worked with a handful of Edward Jones advisors, right? And Jones is notorious about these 350, 400 household books. I don't
yeah,
know how an advisor can do that, especially when it's, one advisor, one branch office administrator in that
right,
structure. I
right,
also work with some ultra high net worth kind of affluent audience advisors that are, they got a $170 million book with 55 clients.
right,
So yeah, right sizing, I think, from my experience, is really important to always consider. That your top 80% and those 20% of clients. So you're holding
right,
on to relationships on the bottom end that don't have the value.
exactly.
Those are toxic for other reasons. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Gotta right size.
Right. And not only right sizing with clients, right sizing with the amount and type of work you do. For example, I could be on the computer 24/7 and find articles to write and things like that. At some point, I have to say, I owe it to myself to just relax. It's not so important to do these other things. So, what if I didn't write 2 articles this week? And the so what is a much better 2 words than what if.
Yeah.
What if always leads to something negative? So what gives you a break? So what? What's the worst that can happen here? And that's what I advise people to do. So let me get on to burnout resilient habit number 2. Burnout resilient habit number 2. Financial advisors who are burnout resilient employ either the mental toughness routine that I taught in the last workshop or something like that they can use to derail toxic self-talk habits. If you didn't attend the first workshop, I'll give you some quick steps to mental toughness now, but I can give you the whole series and so forth by just emailing me again, drjack@advisingtheadvisors.com. What is mental toughness? Mental toughness is what every athlete learns on how to bring their A game consistently, on how to bounce back when things don't go well instead of just lingering in the defeat or the failure. And that's what the A game is for financial advisors. How do I on top of my game all of the time instead of feeling like I'm just burned out for dealing with a client now or going to a client meeting or doing a seminar that I really don't feel like doing? So that's what mental toughness is about. And the stages I'll do quickly now, but again, in the book, and it's also, I'll send you the information. The stages are, first, you have to recognize when you're feeling a negative emotion. So um, are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling stressed? Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling irritated? Whatever that is write down what that emotion is. And step number 2 is think about what you were saying to yourself right before you recognized that you had that emotion. So, what was my self talk? What was I saying to myself right before I realized I was feeling anxious? Maybe it was, my partner whom I live with is demanding my time and I don't feel I have the time and I'm conflicted. I don't know what to do. I need this to do this work related thing and he or she wants my time. I'm getting irritated and impatient. I don't know how to deal with this. Okay. So write down exactly what the thought pattern was that you recognize that came just before you notice that you're feeling the irritation or whatever the emotion is. We know, by the way, in psychotherapy now, that once we recognize what people are thinking, we can much more quickly resolve their emotions and their moods. When it used to be thought that people have to go to see a therapist or a coach who's an expert in psychotherapy for years or months to resolve problems because they're long buried conflicts. That's really not true. Problems are resolved by figuring out what kind of conflict you have in your mind that's leading to toxic self-talk and what those habits are, so we can change those habits so people get better. Even people with chronic illnesses, by the way, I've dealt with many people with chronic illnesses that the doctors can't cure them, they just keep giving them medication. But once I understand the internal dialogue that's going on, miraculous things can happen. I remember one advisor came to me who said that I was his last step before getting major back surgery because he had some disc problems and they said there was no cartilage left. He had to have some disc fused. His back would never be the same. And he was hoping that I could help him. And what we did was hypnosis. With most of my clients, I make hypnotic recordings because you can use that to teach your mind to want to do the right things for your body. And his disc problems, I don't know if the right word is disappeared, but he never had the surgery and he went back to rock climbing again. Years later, he developed cancer and got panicked. And he said, "Can we do the same thing for cancer?" I said, "We can try it. I can't guarantee anything." I made a hypnotic recording for the cancer and it went into remission. So I'm telling you this, that there are powerful things we can do by taking charge of our thinking. Hypnosis is just one of the ways that we do that. So once you understand the thoughts, the next thing you need to do is stop these thoughts dead in their tracks. Now, how do you do that? You get yourself a rubber band, the kind that come in the mail. That's a fat rubber band that sits loosely on your wrist. It's called the number 64 rubber band if you want to go into Staples or somewhere and get a package of them, but you really only need one. They're not going to break. And you start snapping away to stop those thoughts. Now, that's going to be a little bit of a sting, but that's important because your subconscious mind doesn't want to feel the sting. So if you keep doing that consistently, it'll stop those thoughts before they continue. So what have we done now? We've recognized the emotion. We've recognized the thoughts that lead to the emotion. Now we've stopped the thoughts with the rubber band. Next, we need to relax our body. How do we do that? We take some deep breaths in through our nose, hold it for the count of 4, and then exhale like you're blowing out a straw to the count of 7 out your mouth. This is called diaphragmatic breathing. It's the kind of breathing that musicians and singers and athletes learn how to do because it's the most relaxing, wholesome kind of breathing. Breathing in through your nose to the count of 4, 2, 3, 4, hold it, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the best way to know if you're really doing this correctly is you can practice while you're watching TV or while you're sitting at your desk. Fold your hands over your stomach. If when you breathe in, your stomach moves out, and when you breathe out, your stomach moves back in, that's diaphragmatic breathing. Most of you, until you practice this, will find your stomach isn't moving at all. Whatever is moving is your chest and your shoulders. That's shallow breathing, causes more anxiety. So you can practice and learn that skill very quickly. So now you've done some breathing to calm yourself down. What's the next step? The next step is to challenge the thoughts that you had in the beginning. And I have a list of those I can send you. Do I have any evidence supporting this thought that I had? Am I just being emotional rather than rational? Am I using words that are scary in my dialogue, like, "You always do this to me, you always interrupt me when I'm trying to do my work," or "You never are there when I need you"? Never and always are challenging words that sometimes we use too often. We do it with our children, with our spouses, and so forth, as well as in business. So you need to challenge the thoughts by using logic. What's the percentage or the probabilities that what I'm really worried about are actually going to happen? So if one of your thoughts in that scenario I gave you before was, "My partner really doesn't care about what I'm doing. He or she is only cares about themselves and what they need." Ask yourself, do I have any evidence to support that they don't really care? What's the probability? Because it happened before, does that mean they don't care? Maybe there are other reasons why they're interrupting us. They don't know we're working on something. They forgot that we told them last time, we'll let them know when we're available, whatever the case may be. You need to ask yourself what the probability is of the thing you're worried about is really going to happen, because most of us really, they're low probability things. In fact, when people are frightened about something, fear, F-E-A-R, we like to say that stands for false evidence appearing real, because about 93% of the things that people are afraid of are things that will never happen. But we're afraid of them because we think they could happen. So what is the probability it could happen? Okay. So you decide to go for a walk during COVID on a trail in the woods. If you stop right away and say, "What if I get bitten by a rattlesnake?" The first question to ask yourself is, what is the probability that's going to happen? Have you seen any snakes on the trail before? Do snakes chase after people, do you think? Or do they try to avoid people? And that's what the rattle is for, to warn you, don't come near you. So what is the probability I'm really going to get bitten by a rattlesnake? So I'm just giving you that as an example. And then you change up the negative toxic thoughts to healthy nutrition thoughts like, I am proud of who I am. My work will continue to improve. Will I run into roadblocks? Of course, everybody does. I'm learning to overcome those roadblocks. This is nutritious thinking rather than what if thinking. And the final step is you do the breathing again, just to sort of anchor it at the end. So that's my 7-step mental toughness routine that most professional athletes even told me takes them only 5 minutes and is the best thing they've ever done before going out on the field or into the court for a game. So I'll stop again for questions.
There we go, Jack. The only other one I've got, which I could save to the end, Jack, if you want to jump in there. But our friend James asked, tell us a bit about how you work with advisors outside of obviously the books. You want to
Okay.
do that now or
All right. So I'm a personal coach when I have the hours. I'm a personal coach for advisors, and frequently they like to go through the book with me. I have an online course that you can get 12 continuing education credits for, a voucher for that. It's called Developing the Mindset of a Champion Financial Advisor. That's the only course of its type, and I can send you information on that. And because it's Charlie, and because I care so much about Charlie and his valued clients and prospects, I'll give anyone in this call a 20% discount if they're interested in the course. And then the book, if you just want the book, I said it's $15. But most of what I do is I used to be a keynote speaker before COVID. Now I'm doing it all virtually. So I have a whole series of training programs I do for advisory firms. And I have one for clients. Most client events are a waste of money in the back of a restaurant. The plate liquor, no, that doesn't cut it with me. I have a program called How to Live Much Longer Than Your Kids Hoped You Would. The Psychology of Life Extension packs the house, and everyone wants to bring guests and relatives who are your future clients, new prospects. So if you want to talk to me about my client event, I'd be happy to do that. Most of the time, the advisor doesn't even have to pay for it. They work for insurance carriers or for wholesalers that pick up and underwrite the cost. Everybody's a winner there. So just contact me, Dear Jack at Advising Advisors. And thanks, James, for giving me a chance to do a commercial. That was great. I appreciate that very much.
All right, Jack, we got another one from our friend Michael. How does one tell an employer these kinds of problems when they really don't understand? Michael, great question.
Could you repeat that? I missed the word.
How would one tell their employer, Jack, who
Oh,
expects all that input into the role? How
yeah,
would they tell their employer the problems
right.
when they just
That is the subject of another webinar, but I'm going to give you some information you can look up. I teach all advisors and their employers to use active empathic listening skills in communicating. So that we don't have time to get into much of that here, but that's a way to make the employer less defensive when you have to give feedback. So look up active listening or active empathic listening, and you'll find highlights of what that's all about. So that's a great question.
Yeah, I got another good one for you, Jack. David said we feel responsible for some clients, especially the elder clients who may be left behind in these high-tech times, Zoom and digital presence and all that other stuff. Potential for okay. How do we activate and engage those reluctant clients?
Well, I think that whatever you can do proactively with clients is important. I think too many advisors just deal reactively with clients. Like if the market crashes, then they know they have a lot of disgruntled or frightened clients. But if you proactively have ongoing little meetings like this with them to tell them that no matter what the market does, here's how we have you protected in your portfolio, so you won't have to worry. You assume that everyone's going to worry, especially older people or people who've been ill and things like that. So assuming that, we want to help them. But if you want more specific information on that, was it Michael who sent you that?
That's David.
Okay, David, just contact me and we can talk about that, because that's one of the great things about being a financial professional. Besides, you can make a nice living for your family, is you're really helping people. You're in one of the helping professions, and it's important that you remember that, because these people are entrusting you with their wealth. You're shepherding them through their later years, where their biggest fear is that they'll outlive their money, and you're helping them so that won't have to happen. So it's very special working with them. And the other thing you can do is offer them my client event on how to live longer and healthier, because they'll learn all kinds of tips from that. So another way for me to put in a cheap commercial. Thanks very much, David. All right, let's get to burnout resilient habit number 3. This is going to be very important, because this is the most heavily researched personality trait that leads to consistent resilience and high performance and better health. and longer life. It leads to all of these things. One personality trait that was discovered about 40 years ago, when the psychologist who had developed this studied this in, I think it was MetLife is where it started, looking at insurance professionals. But this piece of research has been replicated 1,000 times over 40 years in hundreds of companies, not only financial people, but athletes, anybody, and they keep finding the same results. Has to do with your mindset, and it's a trait for simultaneously building your success, stress resilience, enhanced immune functioning, longer life. And if you don't currently possess this trait, you can learn it. I have done this in many advisory firms. I've had workshops teaching them how to develop this one personality trait. And that is, how do you deal with events that take place in your life, whether they're successful or unsuccessful? How do you deal with them? Are you dealing with them in an optimistic way or in a pessimistic way? And I'm going to tell you what that's like. It's not simply the glass is half full or empty. People with an optimistic orientation tend to treat obstacles and setbacks as temporary, and therefore they're surmountable. Okay, I ran into this obstacle, this roadblock, I can figure out my way around it, and I can make it better the next time. Optimistic people who suffer setbacks tend to attribute them to external causes. Wasn't really my fault. It was a circumstance I was in. I was unlucky in that situation, bad timing, what have you. And this does not reflect who I am as a person or any other thing that I engage in life. On the other hand, people who look at things pessimistically, and that unfortunately is most of us, research shows that most of us tend to be pessimistic explainers of events, not optimistic, take them very personal. It's my fault that this happened. It's going to keep happening. I don't know how to stop it. I feel hopeless. It's part of my life in general where I screw up. So optimists see negative events as fleeting, localized impediments. Pessimists see them as chronic, pervasive, and permanent. Now, I know many of you who are listening now who may be optimistic probably live with pessimistic people, or part of your family are pessimistic, and this is very much important to you. Again, it's in my book, and it's really in my course, because a lot of this material came out after I wrote the course, after I wrote the book. When something happens, to what do you attribute the cause? Is adversity perceived as short-lived, which would be the optimistic view, or unrelenting, which is the pessimistic view? Are setbacks viewed as manageable hurdles that can be overcome? That's the optimistic view. Or as unrelenting disasters? I feel helpless. I don't know how to stop this. That's the pessimistic view. Is adversity seen as a challenge to be confronted? That's the optimistic view. Or as an insurmountable obstacle to be avoided because you don't have any control over it? That's the pessimistic view. You know, I always was struck by a quote from Winston Churchill, where he said, a pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, but an optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. I've always loved that particular quote. So how do we embrace the power of optimistic thinking? Again, that's the source of a webinar by itself, but when something happens to you, good or bad, how do you attribute to the cause? Let's look at pessimistic thinkers when something happens good. They get a new client, some good news, something good happens. These folks tend to say to themselves, this was a fluke, or I was just lucky this time, or in the right place at the right time. So it's really not likely to continue, and it's not how things usually go in my life. So it didn't happen because of my ability, my skills, my effort, just a fluke. It will not continue to happen. It's temporary. It's not reflective of my success in general. No, I usually screw things up. And when the news is bad, as I told you, oh, this is all my fault. I didn't prepare properly. The client canceled the appointment because of something I must have done or said. This is going to happen again. I don't know how to fix these issues. I feel hopeless. Maybe I need to get out of this career field. Whereas the optimistic person, when something bad happens, that was the fluke. That was unfortunate. That was unlucky. It's really mostly not in my control, and it's unlikely to happen again. What can I learn from this and move on? And when something good happens, it's because of my work ethic. It's because of my talent. It's because of my motivation. This will continue to happen, and it's reflective of much of my life. So I will constantly be successful and healthy. Here's some examples that I've heard from clients I've worked with of unhealthy, pessimistic discussions during COVID. Excuse me. COVID-19 will last indefinitely, and my working and family life will always be a problem for me from now on. I have little control over things that happen to me. There's really no way I can solve some of the problems I have, so I feel helpless. There's little I can do to change many of the important things in my life. Examples from healthy, nutritious, optimistic thinking during COVID-19. I am capable of adapting to forced changes. I've discovered that, especially now. There are silver linings in this. It's taught me how to use Zoom, for example, which I can use with my clients at any time. I don't have to have them always come into the office. It's helped my children to learn to use Zoom for remote learning, which can be helpful for them now and in college. What happens to me in the future mostly depends on me, not the situation, on how I interpret it. I can do just about anything I really set my mind to. I still expect much from life. COVID-19 will end just as other pandemics have ended. I can't control it, but I can certainly control how I think about it and how I use the time to strategize about making my business even more successful. So, in summary, if what happens to you is good news, the healthiest people, the optimistic ones, think to themselves, this is always how it's going to happen. It'll continue to happen for me this way because of my talent, my work ethic, and my motivation. It's because of my ability, my skills, that things will keep happening. And when you have those rough times where bad things happen, unfortunate things happen, I'm not happy about this, but it was because of a fluky event that I couldn't control. The client canceled the appointment for a host of reasons that have nothing to do with me. This is unlikely to happen again. What can I learn from it and just move on to my next opportunity? This does not happen in other parts of my life. People who learn to interpret unfortunate events and situations and circumstances in this optimistic way thrive, produce much more better in their life, in all areas of their life. They're better parents, they're better partners for their spouse or partner. And actually, there's a personality test in 20 minutes that'll determine which of these types you are. And then the training goes on to teach you how to become optimistic. So, some of the things that happen with optimistic people, besides doing better at work, they have protection from cardiovascular disease. Optimistic people have much fewer incidences of cardiovascular disease, even if they have the traditional risk factors such as obesity, smoking, sugar, excessive alcohol use, high cholesterol, blood pressure. The optimists still have more protection because of the way they think. And they get speedy recoveries when they do have heart attacks and things like that. It increases your immune functioning, which will keep you living longer and better. There's lower cholesterol, lower inflammation, less pain, less risk of a stroke. And my client event goes into much more detail than this. I don't have time to go into a lot of that, but I want to give you an exercise before we finish and have the final questions. I want you to give you an optimistic exercise to visualize the outcome you want, like playing a video in your mind, a video of successes you've had in the past, and repeat them. This is why it works, and it always worked with my athletes. I would tell them to visualize the most success they had in their event, whether it was last year, 5 years before, in high school, whatever the case may be. What was the most successful event you had? Just close your eyes and visualize it. Visualize as much detail as you can. Where was I? Who was I playing against? Was I on a team? What was the weather like that day? What was I thinking? Just the best success you've ever had. Sports figures know that they visualize all the time to see themselves recovering from a bad situation or a bad play or making a three-point shot or missing it or whatever, instead of dwelling on what went wrong, which is what most people tend to do, and that's going to make it keep happening. They visualize on what went right. So before you start your day, think about tasks or encounters that cause you some anxiety and visualize what the best possible outcome for you has looked like before. Almost like playing a video recorder in your mind. I've been in this situation before. Here's the best time that it worked for me. Visualize that and anticipate it happening again in that positive way. Even better is visualizing how you recover from a problem. Well, even if a problem occurs, how will I recover? Because optimists see adversity as non-permanent and surmountable. So I think with that, I recognize I've gone through this rapidly, but again, the course really goes into detail on this and gives you a template, and the book gives you more information, but I'm open to final questions now.
And Jack, we got a few of them. First off, my buddy Colin in Florida. Colin, thanks for joining us. Wonderful to see you here. I'll see you again this summer, man. We'll be back at our place. So, Colin has a kind of a three-parter here, Jack, but I think the third one really just summarizes his two questions. So, regarding optimism versus pessimism, you said that optimistic people see setbacks as externally versus pessimistic. Externally versus pessimistic people who really internalize that, right?
Yeah.
So Colin's question in that regard is, let me find it here. Can you compare this to the idea that successful people see themselves as ultimately responsible for everything that happens to them?
Yeah, that's a common question I get, Colin. So thanks for asking it. The research, a lot of people, for example, coaches, if I'm working with coaches, they say, well, when one of my players screws up, I want him or her to take responsibility for that. I don't want them passing it off saying it's not my fault. It was a circumstance, that's just not being accountable. And I give them the following answer. While what you're saying may be accurate to some degree, the research shows that when people maintain this "it wasn't my fault" mentality, they always do better and they're always healthier, whether they're taking accountability or not. So why not keep doing it? That's my answer to that.
Yeah, and Colin kind of, he kind of, in summary to that, Jack, he says, like if a prospect is a no-show, for example, do I need to choose to be an optimist and say that was a fluke, moving on with life? Or do you say that's my fault, I need to see what I could have done better to make sure that that prospect shows up?
Well, I think the latter is always important as long as you don't use phrases like "this is my fault." I would like to use a phrase like, what did I learn from this? Let me examine it. Is there something here that I missed that I can use for the next time? And if so, I can't wait for the next opportunity. So I always used to tell athletes, there's no such thing as a loss. And they would say, what do you mean? What if I lost the match? I'd say, did you learn something from it? Yeah, what did you learn? Okay, I learned that when I'm in this situation, I need to do this. Then you're a winner. You can use it the next opportunity. There's no losing. What did you learn from it and move on instead of saying, oh, woe is me, I screwed up. Because that's going to start off the fight or flight nervous system, which is going to be a habit that's going to cause you a problem the next time.
Cool. And then Stephanie asks, how do you discern honest optimism, Jack, versus self-delusion or denial? Lack of accountability?
Again, the research, Stephanie, shows that even if people are a little bit in denial, they live longer, they're healthier, and they're more successful than those who just say, I need to be honest with myself, I messed this up. You can do that to a degree where you learn from it, as I mentioned, and you move on from there. But too many people beat themselves up. This was my fault. I don't know what to do about it. And then they're just contributing to this ongoing self-defeating habit. So diluting yourself a little bit is okay because it really works, especially when it comes to your health. You can fool your brain by not taking responsibility. Your brain will go along with whatever you tell it. Example, Stephanie, if I was standing in front of you with a sour lemon and I sliced the lemon in half and I said, Stephanie, I want you to visualize that I've handed you the lemon. Close your eyes and visualize that I've handed you the lemon. I want you to take a big juicy bite out of it, but we're not really doing that. You're just visualizing it, imagining it. Most likely, Stephanie, you will start to salivate because your brain thinks you bit into the lemon and it's sending the salivation there to cut the acid. So our brain just takes orders from us. So if the order is, this is not my fault, I'm still going to be fine, I'll learn from it and move on, that's the best answer rather than telling yourself a real negative message, I screwed up, and then your brain's going to go into the emergency mode and prevent you from doing what you're capable of doing the next time.
So Jack, I did that exercise as you were saying it, and I did salivate, actually. My mouth watered when he said it. Now, yeah. I got to tell you, Stephanie's got a comment, and it's got an LOL after it, so I got to preface this with the LOL.
Okay.
So narcissists live longer?
I don't know. I don't know. That's a wonderful question. I really have no idea.
Maybe
Um,
research on it.
so we'll find out.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting question. Do narcissists live longer?
Yeah.
So I have an ex-wife who's a narcissist, and she's just chugging right along. Maybe they do.
Maybe we could put some scientific
Maybe she's better off since I left. So that could be why she's living longer.
Who knows? I don't know what that's like, Jack, but I know you well enough to know that we have fun together.
Yes,
So,
we do.
so
Yes, we do.
cool, Jack. Well, listen, that's the end of the questions. I'm going to take when you wrap, Jack, you just give me the hint because I'm going to take about 2 minutes to give myself a commercial.
Okay.
Yeah. So we good with that?
Yep. Go ahead. Give yourself a commercial.
All right. Very cool. Jack, on the right-hand side, I want to share my screen real quick here. On the right-hand side, we're under panelists. If you can see my name there. If you can make me a host, great. If not, I can talk right through this thing. So no big deal.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Let's see. Because I don't have that thing that says, I have participants. Let's see. I don't know where that is. Wait, I can have you share the screen though from your thing. Okay, all panelists. So I did that, and now you're all set, and you should be able to do that now.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it. All right, there we go. So all I'm going to do is share a couple screens on a PowerPoint real quick here. Social advisors, first off, let me tell you, I've been working with advisors since '98, got a team of 12 people, most of us based out of Daytona Beach, Florida. We are essentially business development partners to financial advisors. We help set up automated business development processes to bring you more opportunity, more time to your life, and more freedom. So that said, we have launched with 5 different business partners an awesome platform called Post Party. I'm showing you a slide on this, socialpostparty.com. Go there, take a look at it, get about a 2-minute video from me explaining what it is. Content marketing, specifically on LinkedIn. For those of you seeking professional prospects, executives, business owners, plan sponsors, young professionals, If it's of a professional nature, LinkedIn is awesome for it. What we've done is we've created a platform that you can find at Social Post Party that helps you get your content in front of huge audiences. We're working on getting Jack using it now. But what it is, you guys, we've done a lot of research in the algorithm on LinkedIn's newsfeed, and we found that the first 2 hours after you post is the most critical time. So what we've done is we've organized, again, with these 5 business partners, we've organized Post Party. We run 30 post parties a month. And when you run a post party, all you're doing is you're posting at the same time as a group of other people. And then you take a little time and you interact on each other's posts. It's randomized. These are not necessarily your target audience, but that help gets you huge audiences. So I can tell you confidently, 500% larger audiences on your content. I've literally seen posts do a 25x. So if you're used to getting 100 views on your content, you can expect to get about 2,500. The other thing that I want to talk about real quick is on March 25th, we're in the next month already. I'll be hosting a webinar, Content Marketing Secrets for Financial Professionals. So we'd love to see you there. By virtue of you guys signing up for this event, I've got your email address. I'll get an invite to you for that event as well. And with that, Jack, let's just make sure we didn't get any other questions while I was talking there. Looking pretty good. I see you clicking through them right now, Jack. Thanks for taking care of that. And Jack, let me express my extreme gratitude for you joining us today. Again, when I listen to others do webinars, Jack, I learn things about them and what they do. When I listen to you do a presentation, I learn more about me, and that's awesome.
That's the key. That's the key. So the next one we'll do is some more skills for developing the mindset of a champion financial advisor.
Awesome. And we'll get that scheduled probably during April sometime, Jack, and we'll get an invite out to everybody for that one as well.
Great.
All right. So Jack,
thanks so much, Charlie. I appreciate it. And again, anyone who wants to contact me for any reason, drjack@advisingtheadvisors.com.
And I'll put my email address in the chat real quick here, so you can contact me at your leisure. C. Van Derven at socialadvisors.com. Great to see some familiar faces and some familiar names. Great to meet some new people. Jack, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, and everybody who joined us, thank you for taking time out of your busy day as well.
My pleasure. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.